Good morning, everybody. Thanks again for joining us with our Disciples Talk, where we come together every Saturday morning at 10 to what we do discuss the Word of God, giving different viewpoints, asking questions, making comments, basically just going through from different perspectives of how the Word of God affects us at the point of life that we are in. On Saturday mornings, we come again discussing the word. If you desire a preach word, Sunday mornings at 10. If you go to JesusPeaceMinistries.org, you can catch peace word from our pastor, Apostle Dr. James W. McGrady Jr., as he comes forth on that, because we are all members of Jesus Peace Ministries, where again, our pastor is Apostle Dr. James W. McGrady Jr. And we're going to continue on with a discussion we're having. We're moving into the area where we're discussing women who are supporting the word, not necessarily giving a lot of significance, a lot of background, a lot of information on the things they did. But we have to understand that they played a significant role in supporting the work of God. And that's what we're trying to highlight, because we're in a time where there's many that have the concept and the mindset that um, and even in the natural, where women should not be in certain positions. They don't have the abilities to, again, do the things that are required. So we're going to try to dispel a few things and hopefully encourage and give insight to, again, the power that the women walk in, but also the authority. And that's why we started out in the creation of man, going back to what God did with man and with woman, and what he said and declared that they have dominion over, and how it's got watered down over the centuries. Uh, again, we opened up with that. Last week we were talking and we mentioned a little bit about Sarah, but we had to go back into how man fell, and the angels that even came and took to them wives, the women. But God saw that what he had meant to happen in the earth was being um, misused. So he cleared the earth again, started again with Noah. So we're working our way back into Abraham, but we're trying to give a lot of history of some things, as well as just focusing on what the women did and the role of the women. So again, that's a lot to try to go through, and I know we only have an hour, but we're going to try to do our best. We're not going to rush anything. So if you spend time with us, we'll get to the point. So didn't know if any one of you all, Roz, James, Keisha, had any point that you want to start off with, because again, we got a lot of areas, but just want to see if there's anything on your minds that you want to discuss. I'm
No, sir.
looking, searching. Hi, hello.
I was. It seemed like Keisha was saying something.
No, I said no. Mm-mm.
Oh.
Oh boy, James.
Well, when we were talking
You're
about
welcome.
women, you wanted us to come back and talk about some of the women. I mean, you gave us some to study as well, but I did wanted to bring up one that's not on there, and that was Hannah, if I may.
Of course, you may.
But to me, Hannah stood out to me more than any of them. I mean, she wasn't. She was just a. I don't want to say ordinary woman, but she was just an ordinary woman. She wasn't a prophetess. She wasn't, in a leadership position. She was a wife that could not bear children. But the thing that stood out about me with her and that I like, her prayer life, but more importantly, her relationship with God, because she was bitter. Well, let me go back. Well, she was one of two wives. So, and I'm not saying she thought that she was in competition with the other wife, because her husband loved her just the same, but she just couldn't bear a child. And so she was bitter, but she didn't, like, the bitterness didn't make her give up. It made her pray more. And I think that brought
Mm.
her, well, I know it brought her relationship with God closer. Even when she was praying in the temple, she was mistaken for being drunk, but that still didn't. She still was humble. She still laid it all at the altar, and she what the thing that really stuck out to me too is that whenever she was blessed with a child, she kept her word. And it got me to thinking, how many times, I'm speaking for myself here, if I say, Lord, if you get me out of this, Lord, if you deliver me from this, Lord, if you do X, Y, and Z, I won't be in this place again. But I've faltered on my word several times to God, But with Hannah, she said, if you give me this child, if you give me this child, I will give it back to you. And that really spoke volumes to me, because she wasn't selfish in that relationship with God. And when he gave her that child went on to change history and still continued to do the work. Hannah wasn't specifically doing the work of God, but her prayers to God and her relationship with God enabled Samuel to do the work of the kingdom. And I think Hannah, for me, it's so many characteristics that I can name about her, but that her prayer life and her consistency and her relationship with God and her humbleness, even though she was taunted about not being able to have children, she still held fast to her prayers and her relationship with God. So I just wanted to bring her up and shout her out, because I think that God takes an ordinary person. He can do anything with anyone, but she didn't have a title, and he answered her prayers, because like I said, she laid them all at the altar. And when she laid them all at the altar, it says her countenance changed. So she found peace within herself before the prayer was even answered. So when she left it there, and then I think about myself sometimes again, we pray and ask God for things, but do we really just leave it all there and don't worry about it? Do we do that? I know sometimes I don't. I can speak for myself. I don't, because self-consciously I'm still, thinking like God is, she laid it all there and forgot about it. And it says that her countenance changed. She was at peace with whatever decision, God would do. But she laid it there. And they say, when you pray about it, don't worry about it. But sometimes I know I don't do that.
Well, you said a mouthful. I don't know if anybody else have any comments they want to discuss. And for those that are watching, and this is coming out of First Samuel.
Oh yeah, I forgot to say the scripture. I'm sorry.
Hannah,
Yeah.
and her relationship, not only with her husband, but more importantly, the relationship she had with God. And one thing I want to highlight before I pass it on to James, you and Keisha, is one of the more important things is it's not often that God titles us. Very few mentions of what God had considered us to be. Because with God, the most important thing is worshiping him and serving him. Man is caught up on titles a lot of times. So that's why even when we're talking about highlighting these women, yeah, there's some women in the Bible that have a title, but that title wasn't given by God. That's what those around them or what they had considered themselves to be. And as we go through, I'm going to highlight a lot of that stuff, and you will probably bring forth those points as you now try to zoom into the history of the person, because the Bible doesn't declare everything about the person. And if we just go by what's written in the Bible, we're going to miss a lot about the person, because a lot of about the person isn't written. But that don't mean the person didn't live a long life, didn't live a good life, didn't live a worshiping life. So we got to dig in, and that's what I want to highlight. Because for women to come up into place today, the way we look at them in society and consider them in society today, just all of a sudden now being able to mount the pulpit and give a word to a lot is going to be offensive because of the way they've been brought up. So we have to be able to now go back in history, shirk, some of the beliefs and some of the things that we have been trained to do, taught to do, and to believe in things of that nature, because it hadn't been of God. It's just been of man and man's perspective of things. and God didn't intend it or didn't mean it. So this is gonna hopefully encourage and build up and insight, um, ignite, some things, not only in women but in man, to understand, how we have missed God and how we have looked at women and treated women in the way that God had intended women to be. So it's going to uncover, unlock, open up and push us into a different, again, walk with God. And that's going to be a great thing. But you said a lot of things, but that's the highlight that I want to definitely put forth, is just dealing with, the titles and how the titles come about. Not that they're not important, but they may not be what God had intended for the person. It's just what man likes for the person. So, James, Keisha, if you want to add anything or talk about that we can move on.
So I don't necessarily have a exact point to that fact, but I do have a question. And I guess my question is, why were the women unable to bear initially when God said to be fruitful and multiply? Was there a reason some of the women in the Bible could not have children?
Well, it's again, I can't give a specific answer. I could just give my belief on this, because everything is in the timing of God. And even in childbearing, depending on people's belief, their worship, their walk with God, God can make them multiply and fruitful, but it's also how he will make them multiply and fruitful even in the natural, even though childbearing is a natural thing. Um, in the concept of things, God was doing it more so for what he wanted to do in the earth. So there's times when if the earth or the people in the earth weren't doing everything they in the desire and the will of God, it's just like our natural harvest. There's sometimes we could do the same thing year after year. Then all of a sudden we got a year where the stuff ain't producing. It's the same soil, same watering, same time of year and everything else. So why isn't it that this isn't producing this year? Well, because in years past, we have not done what was right in the earth. So God is always concerned about what's going on in the earth. And then he sends forth someone to now do something in the midst of man, for man to get back in place and right standing with God. So when we go through in the Old Testament, we look at these individuals that God is putting forth, these judges in certain instances, these prophets in certain instances. They're coming about because of how God is looking at what man is doing. So when you got women that's not producing or not bearing children, even though God desires them to be fruitful, they may be fruitful in other ways, but because they may be saying some things, and we can see this sometimes even in today's church, we can seem churchy and put things on God that God ain't got nothing to do with. And because he don't have nothing to do with it, he won't let it be fruitful or multiply. So when people are walking around speaking God, but not living God, God is not going to allow that to be fruitful. So now there's plenty of individuals that we could talk about that went through a time that they weren't bearing, and it's all a different situation based on the person. When we get to, well, why didn't they bear? Even at the time they were able to bear. Well, why is it at this time they were able to bear? God is in control. And just because he puts it, he said it's going to rain on the just as well as the unjust. So he's going to have a balance out there. And I hate to use that word balance, but he's going to have the balance in our lives to, again, allow us to realize or open our eyes to why we're not being productive, why we're not being fruitful, why we're not multiplying. Sometimes we still miss the mark, and he has it right in front of our face. because you're looking churchy, you're sounding spiritual, but you're not really worshiping me or acknowledging me in what you're doing. You're trying to acknowledge yourselves and build yourself up in man's eyes. And I'm not going to be a part of that. That's the best answer I can give.
Thank
Now,
you.
going through different individual by individual, it's going to be different reasons for them, but it's going to equate to almost the same thing, how they were living their life. And sometimes you could be living a good life and God just wants to use you for a greater thing that he has down the road. You have to have an understanding of your walk with God, as Roz pointing out with Hannah, that despite the things that's going on around me, I'm still going to worship my God. How many people can actually say that? That despite it all, because God is the one that has the final say it in all. And are we going to worship him until we die? Throughout our life? You know, we can have some peaks and some valleys. you know, it's easy to worship God when things are good, but what do you do when things ain't good? When things are bad, when you're feeling a certain type of way, when you're frustrated, agitated, now you know you're questioning your walk. Are you still gonna serve God? And that's when he truly blesses. Because the word he declared is not gonna come back unto him void. But that doesn't mean it's gonna be void. It's not going to be void in some of our lives. And that's what this whole thing is about, getting us back in the right standing with God from what he had planned in the beginning, walking in dominion, walking in authority, but also walking in the knowledge that all of this comes from God. It ain't of me and myself where I should go or become high-minded.
That brings me back to you told us we're going to talk about Miriam today, and when you said God is in control and it's his plan from the very beginning, I think the story with Miriam is definitely one where God shows that he is in control and his will, you know, be done. His will was done. I think Miriam was God was using all of them, and Numbers, you told us Numbers 12:1. But when I kept studying the entire chapter, God was using all of them, but he was just using them in different ways. And sometimes I think we have to realize God is not going to use everyone for the same thing. And we can't be jealous or have that, you know, that jealous spirit, because what he has for me may not be for you. I'm going to have a different testimony. So, you know, Miriam and her brother, and you know, they spoke out against Moses, you know, and when God heard it, and he was like, well, you know, let me handle the situation right quick. We all know the story, but they weren't concerned about the Ethiopian woman that he married. The deeper issue was his position and authority with God. And Moses didn't speak up for him, but God defended him. So we have to be careful sometimes how we, you know, life and death, power of the tongue, how we come against people that are in positions that we might not know why God has them in that position. We don't know how God is using that person for that particular season. So I think that Miriam was a perfect example of how we know that God is in control. That even though both Miriam and her brother spoke out against Moses, and you know, the authority that he had, that God had given him, she was the only one that, she was the only one that was, you know, punished at that moment with leprosy, or leprous, as they say.
Okay, well, again, Raj, you bringing forth a lot in that area. But before I jump into that, anybody got anything in that area with Hannah? Any other questions, comments, thoughts, or you gonna speak of Hannah more down the road?
I think that I looked at the difference between Hannah and Sarah. Hannah had patience and waited. Sarah decided to help God out, and God does not need our help.
Right.
And God had done gave them a promise, which was Isaac. So God was shutting up some stuff for his timing for Isaac to come on the scene. But Ishmael came along, then God had to change the stuff around and still honor the promise. It's about like us in the natural. I don't speak for myself. You know, I met my wife years ago, and we was never practicing having no kids, but we was practicing.
Hold on, wait a minute, hold on. Wait a minute. I'm sorry.
Hey, this is still disciples talk. No, hey, hey, we weren't married.
You said you weren't practicing having kids.
We were not practicing having kids.
Okay.
We were practicing other stuff, but we won't having kids was not on the agenda. Just keep it real. Let's just keep it real.
Okay.
I know, we all in church and sometimes want to act churchy. So like with Abraham and Sarah, like she said, I'm pretty sure they were still having intimate sessions, but she just won't getting pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
It's about like when me and my wife got pregnant. We was having intimate sessions, but she wasn't getting pregnant.
Oh, okay. There we go.
We're gonna put it out there. Wasn't like she was always on birth control and this and that. But I remember I asked God, I told God, when I'm 35 years old, the woman I'm with gonna be my wife. And that's what I asked God for. At 35 years old, whoever I'm with gonna be my wife. And I had a previous relationship where I had one daughter in Jersey I love to death. That's my baby. That's one of my babies. I got 2 kids. And I told God I want to do it the right way. I want to be married, want to have a child while I'm married, be in the living room. And once I got married, 9 months later, he gave me Boona, Stacy, my baby. So God heard my request. I wanted to do it the right way. God is a God of covenant and following his statutes. True, there's a lot of people having babies outside the covenant. That's them. God will bless who he want to bless. But when you're in covenant the right way, God is able to pour the blessings into your relationship to make it a whole lot smoother.
Right.
Well, because you're following his plan, it'll be a whole lot better. And I thank God some 28 years later of marriage and Boona 28, it's been a whole lot easier than being on child support. hey, being on child support. Again, being on child support. And see what I'm saying? But when you're in covenant and do it the right way, it's a whole lot easier mentally, physically, and financially. Okay. So a lot of times God don't allow things to happen because he already know what it's going to put on you on the back end. The struggle that's going to take you further from him by doing it your way.
Okay.
With Ishmael.
Okay.
With Ishmael. And so I believe that this is me. I believe that when you wait to do it God's way, he'll bless you abundantly and it'll be a whole lot smoother for you. Where a lot of things you don't have to worry about. Because you're in his covenant and his word is backed by his covenant. He said, I will bless those that follow my covenant. I will bless those that trust me and accept me as their God. And that is true. He is obligated by his word to bless you in a marriage. I know Roz mentioned earlier that, Lisa say Hannah didn't have a title. She didn't have a title as far as minister or anything like that, but she was a wife.
Right, a mother, wife, and eventually a mother.
Absolutely. Exactly. That is an awesome title to have. Even in this day and age, a lot of people don't want to get in, I ain't going rough no feathers. A wife is a covenant that God honors. Mm-hmm. It ain't always easy, but he honors, he honors that. And so, because of the fact I looked at Samuel, he's doing God's work, serving God, serving the people of God. He ain't thinking about his legacy or having kids. But Hannah is. But because I believe, because she supported what a man of God was doing, God heard her prayer and honored her request. Mm-hmm. Even though the man of God wasn't even thinking about it, like I said earlier. But that's something that she wanted from God. The Bible says, what you make happen for someone else, God will make happen for you. Because she's supporting him while he serving God and the people of God. She's missing something herself that the man of God ain't even looking at, ain't even asking for. But I believe because she's connected to her husband, Samuel, that God, she asked such a small thing.
Okay.
I'm gonna
And
give her desires of her heart.
just to correct, Samuel's her son. Elkanah is her
Oh
husband.
yes, got it back.
Yeah. Okay. No problem. But your point is very valid. And again, as Roz had pointed out earlier, and maybe you did as well, James. Sometimes, even in the midst of walking in covenant with God, He's going to be bringing you into a situation and a circumstance that you may even ask and wonder why. And it's just so God can see or use you as a person that's going to stand for Him, even in the midst of adversity. So I want us to, as believers, to understand that just because you have adversity, don't mean that you're not in the will of God. You're perfectly in the will of God, where He is establishing a standard, but He wants you to be able to stand for Him because of what you have said. That's why He brought up Job. When Satan was going to and fro in the earth. And God asked, had you considered my servant Job? So God wants to, again, use us in opportunities, even to allow the enemy to bring stuff in the midst of our life. God's allowing it to come into our lives, upon our lives. And maybe I should say upon our lives, but He's not using it to consume our lives. We're more concerned now with the thing, the adversity, more than what we have been, again, living by, which is our stand for God. It was Job that was praying for his children and intervening just in case, even though we know them children were trifling. We're not following. He knew they was having parties. He said peradventure. No, you know what they doing. But anyway, I don't want to get us too far off. So James, appreciate that. Again, utilizing that Hannah and Sarah analogy. But now, if I can, just to shift back into this area with Miriam that Roz was bringing forth. If I can, I don't know if Keisha, you got anything you want to add in there. You good?
I'm good.
Yeah, okay. All right. But now, again, and Roz, you mentioned out of Numbers 12, this area with Miriam and Aaron.
Yeah.
you know, um, and you spoke of how they was coming up, not necessarily against the Ethiopian woman, but again, it was because again they wasn't really coming up against Moses directly, but again they were not accepting of the person that Moses had attached himself unto, and they
Right.
didn't realize that the person he attached himself to was one that brought him into a greater relationship with God. See, people don't know how significant, again, y'all brought up the wife, how significant that wife can be, into that man, because at the time, Moses wasn't studying God. Moses, ran from Egypt and went into the wilderness where he ran into Jethro and his daughters. So again, there's a lot of significance in the background that we kind of skim over as we're reading about individuals, but not understanding how those individuals got connected to God through someone else. In this essence, through a lot is highlighted with Jethro, but Moses didn't marry Jethro. So again, we have to understand that role, as James had highlighted, Roz, you had identified, of the wife is significant. There's a lot of wives. I know when I got married, man, I wasn't in church. The prayers of my wife at that time was what brought me into a relationship with God. Didn't know that, to the extent that their prayers would open up some things. But, we don't know the end of a thing. And sometimes individuals are in place to initiate or usher us into a thing, but then they're not. I'm not going to say they're not able, but they're not aware of where they may now be carried into because they only see so much or believe so much for a person. And anything outside of that may be much more than they can handle. And that's why we have to be mindful of who we talk to, who we share things with, and how much we reveal unto a person. Because we can reveal something to a person in truth and in honesty. But in the concept of their mind, they have never seen that for themselves. And now it's overwhelming. And now they're going to walk in disbelief of it, or now they're going to walk in fear of it because it's more than what they had considered themselves for to be able to do. That's what happened with women. God had again established what they were going to be able to do in the beginning. But because they didn't see it, believe it, or didn't hear it along the way, is something that now makes them fearful or lets them walk in doubt. Where now we got to dispel all of that if we're going to get back into the right place that God said we need to walk into. Number one, unity. Number one, understand. Number two, understand. And I hate to put numbers on it, but walking in all those things that he had ordained from the beginning. We can't be fearful of this. Man should not feel that he's any less. We may not have all the same gifts and all the abilities. We're not supposed to. Otherwise, we just be robots, replicas of one of another, all looking alike, all sounding alike. And that wasn't the intent of God. He just wanted us to all be in one mind to honor him and worship him. Not one ability. We all got several abilities, different abilities. So we have to understand that going in. Now, the problem with Mary and them had is that they thought their ability, was more honorable than the connection Moses had with his wife. So now they say, well, because you married to that, you can't be really walking in line with God. That's what God heard. Who are you to determine what I'm in favor of? And that's what gets a lot of us as Christians in trouble, because now we come up against those that God using, those that God can use and are using, because it don't line up in our mind. We think it more highly of, well, he speaks to me too. And well, did he tell you he had a problem with Moses? No, y'all, because of how you were brought up, and in your own secluded area and in bondage, y'all mindsets were different. So, see, sometimes people get outside of that, what they've been accustomed to, and now they think they've gotten to where they need to be. Now y'all were in bondage, prophetess, so as they call Miriam a prophetess, I will bring that up. Well, prophetess, what are you saying? What determined you to be a prophetess? When Moses had to come back, did you tell the people when Moses was coming back? What did you know? So now you're talking against something that if you have been paying attention, you should have been reading, and I hate to use this term, but I just like it right now, the tea leaves to see, Moses is coming back to deliver the people. Ain't you one of the people? But now that y'all out there, now you're thinking, you have such a relationship with God, you should be taking over, for Moses. Really? So I don't want to get too more in depth in that. So I know I said a whole lot of that. It just, all that. And, we know about, how God stayed the camp. Moses had to pray for Miriam. And Aaron is just being very meek at this time.
He's trying to stay out of the way. He's out of the flex.
He like that woman you gave me, this sister you gave me. I didn't really say it, guys. So he's having one of them moments when Miriam is now, on her high horse. God speaks to us too, or to me too, because I'm a prophetess. He shows me things, and I'm trying to figure out, because I hadn't read about it, hadn't either heard about it, what it was that God ever showed Miriam. That's a discussion for another time, unless y'all got an answer right now. But I don't know what God ever showed Miriam to even make her a prophetess. I'm not going to take the title away, but again, where did the title come from? What was she doing to again receive this title of prophetess? I wasn't there. I don't know. The people that received it gave it to her, or she gave it to herself. Not sure, but it is written in the Bible that she was this. I have to do a lot more research to try to come up with this. But as of now, and in my limited study area, I can't call it extensive. I have yet to find what she has done, other than this great thing that's highlighted in the Bible, where she comes up against Moses and ultimately against God. And when we come up against the person that God's using, it's not just the person we come up against. We come up against God himself. And as James had highlighted earlier, our stuff can get shut up. A lot of times we're concerned about that wound, but he can shut up our prosperity, not just our fruitfulness, our enlarging of our territory, the things that we're supposed to be able to have, be, and do. It'll get shut up. And sometimes we don't look at how we entreat people, acknowledge people, or discount people that affects our life. So I know that's a lot in there. Didn't mean to get on that, but just wanted to bring back Miriam and highlight some things, but also make it relevant to our lives today about how we can look at people and treat people, or now look at people's relationship and determine that it's not of God. Well, if God honors marriage, why wouldn't he honor it? Anyway, so that's a whole different thing. I'm gonna give it to y'all. Whichever way y'all want to go with it, let's talk.
I was just going to add a question is, what would you say is Miriam's contribution as we look at the women in the Bible?
Well, I look at it in a different way. See, certain people just look at, well, she didn't have a contribution. Because again, I was asking, well, I don't know what she did to become known as a prophetess.
Right.
But her contribution is great when we can look at what we ought not to do. See, I don't look at just what we should do. See, Miriam gives a great example of what we shouldn't do. And that's come up against a person that God is sending. Not just sending, he's sending this person to deliver me from my situation. I mean, I don't understand how she got to this point.
But more importantly, not to cut you out, but this is her brother she's coming up against too.
Well, I don't want us to get caught up on our relationships.
But I'm saying, yeah, I know, but
yeah.
You can't forget that fact.
And in fact, in the Bible, it says Miriam and her brother Aaron. It don't in that sentence, it don't acknowledge Moses, because sometimes we got to look beyond what our natural relationship is and look more importantly to the relationship that person has with God. And sometimes we get so tied up in what we know to be the natural relationship, we will miss God. So yeah, not to discount that, but I want you. We have to understand, more importantly than that bond from the womb, we have to more understand is that walk with God is greater than any relationship we can have walking in this natural thing. Not coming up against husband and wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, brother, sister, aunt, uncle, and all that. But ain't that who Jesus said we need to be able to leave?
Mm-hmm. And you just said something too, where you said that the relationship with God, and that it brought me back to Hannah. I mean, it brought me back to Hannah
Mhm.
because she loved God more than she loved her child, because she gave him back to him, and that relationship that she had with God. So it just made me go back to her for a quick minute as
Well, that's
well.
why I would try to bring things back to life.
Yeah.
You see, because there's something we have to be able to see these what can be deemed as insignificant, but it is so vital in our understanding in our walk with God that because it's not highlighted to the essence of being a major contribution. And Keisha had to, brought up well, what would you say? We have to look at the intricate things. God is detailed. God looks at every little thing. And sometimes those little things that we overlook is the biggest thing in God's eyesight. And we say, oh, it's a little lie. Well, that little lie could be the biggest thing that keep you out of, again, what God is trying to do. So even though it may seem insignificant to us, y'all, it can be so great to God. And that's the thing that we have to look at, and we have to consider everything important. Now, are we there yet? No, I'm not there yet. But I'm learning to look at everything to, the details when we look at simple things. It's springtime. You got bushes now springing off with buds and leaves. And of course, pollen comes with that. But even that comes, to add a nutrient that is necessary in the springing forth and the blooming of things. And it's those little intricate things that now become such a beautiful thing that it just, if we can see God in the midst of everything in our life, we won't overlook so much in life. It's those little intricate things that we have to be mindful of. How is this possible? Why does this happen? Not that we all need to become horticulturalists. No, we don't need to do that study. But if we observe these things and understand that this is something that God had intended even from the beginning. Some people just, have a gift for it. Ain't my gift. I know how to water it. Everything else, somebody else gonna have to give me some insight and some instructions. But it's those things, those intricate little things that become so important to God and so vital in our lives that we have to be mindful of it and pay attention to it. So if there's anything about Miriam, it's not what they called her. It's not what she may have even said unto the people. What I find most important is how we need to entreat God's chosen people, even though we may be anointed to do a certain thing, even though God may speak to us about certain things. Even though he was speaking to her, he ain't tell her to do nothing. Anyway, I don't know he didn't tell her to do nothing. But again, from what I can read in the Bible and have it, and in my, again, not extensive study, but my limited study, I hadn't seen what he did. She was significant in the beginning, getting Moses, downstream, bringing him back to mama for her to, nurture him, get him back into Pharaoh's house. But after that, what did, we don't even hear a whole lot of Moses, in being raised in the house. So I don't know how much more Miriam did while he was there, because she wasn't there when he left to go to the wilderness, and he was there 40 years. So in that 40-year gap, what was it she was doing? Just waiting on the promise that God's going to send a deliverer? Did she know who the deliverer was? Because Moses wasn't born the deliverer. Well, he was born to be the deliverer. We know that. But those that living at that time, what did they know about Moses? Because why would they send him to Pharaoh's house? We could say, yeah, well, we wanted to save him. Well, okay. So again, did you get any other instructions or guidance from that point? So we can infer a lot, but more importantly, I learned what not to do. Well, when they talk about when people come up to me now and say, God told me, man, that's between you and God. I'm not gonna come if you can tell me that God told you that, I'm not gonna come up against what you believe God told you. I know what God told me. So I'm gonna walk in what he told me. I'm gonna be mindful of what he told you because I don't know if it's gonna come to pass or not. I told y'all, in times past, this man of God told me I was going to preach the gospel one day. I didn't believe it, but I held on to that thought, and it has come to pass. So even though we may not accept it, understand it, believe it at the interim when we first hear it, we got to be like Jacob was and be mindful of what it was that we were told, what we heard. Eye that thing. Because in the time, in the season, in God's timing, it will come to pass if it's of God. If not, we know what that person is. Anyway, any other thoughts, comments?
With my limited study, as you said, sir, going back from Genesis to this point, it appears to me, that from Eve in the garden until now, it's like the women's mouth seem to get them in a fix. Get them in trouble a lot of times.
Why you biting your lip, Keisha? Hold on.
First, eating of the apple, wanted to taste it, and now Miriam talking about the man of God. One would take, notice that, be mindful of what we say and what we do with our mouth. Because it seems like to me, it gets us in a lot of trouble at times by what we do and what we say with our mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Just something to be mindful about,
Okay.
But
That's very true.
Add some more context to your statement where you say women, our mouths have gotten us in trouble and probably still do sometimes, but we need to keep, in fact, you went back to the garden, we need to keep, at the forefront, a man was right there with us while we were getting our. I just want to throw that out there.
I'm glad you said that. The Bible said the man was not deceived.
He might not have been deceived, but he was right there in that garden with her. Aaron was standing. They was out. He was right there with Miriam. Let me see. Keep going. But you get my point.
I got
the
your
man
point.
was always somewhere in the midst of the garden.
I agree.
Yeah. And we have spoken that initially. We don't know the thought of Adam of why he fell at that time and did eat. Was it more to be connected back with one man who was bone of his bone, flesh of his flesh, or again, ultimately became the disobedience in doing what God said not to do. But what it highlights for all of our lives is there's a situation that can cause us to falter. That's why we always have to be mindful when we think we've been delivered, from certain things. That again, in our walk, as God did with Job, and all along our Christian journey, he's going to do in our lives. Have you considered my servant, Rosalind, Keisha, James, Jerome? Have you considered them? You can do this, not much, not anything more. He's going to raise up a standard. And how we go through that is going to determine, truthfully, our walk, our faithfulness, our commitment, our belief in and with God. So we all going to go through a trial and a tribulation. Jesus said, it's going to happen to all of us are going to face some persecution and maybe some prosecution. I don't know.
Let's hope not prosecution. Wait a minute.
Yeah, we all got to pass. So But in the midst of that thing, we have to know who we are and whose we are in the midst of that thing. And not think that this shouldn't befall us. Why shouldn't it? If Jesus had to come in, we just celebrated Resurrection Sunday. If Jesus had to come, who knew no sin, and go through all of this. I faced some sin. I was involved in some sin. Not just faced it, I was involved in it. I liked it. So, why should I not go through? So if we get to the point of thinking we so, righteous or perfect that we shouldn't have to go through something, we are fooling ourselves. All of us gonna go through. And all of us not gonna go through the same. That's why all of us can't be looking to do the same thing, because we're not all made the same. But he did put the same thing in us. That's his spirit, to be able to overcome anything the enemy could bring our way. But it's amazing that at hard times, when we face that significant emotional event, that so many fall away. All right, but let's get back to our people. Any other thoughts, comments? And we don't have to go by the list. I just want us to have something to go by, because I don't know where we're going to end up, or it's not in any order that we have to go in. So I put information out just to be considerate. Anybody y'all want to bring up is going to be fine. We ain't got to try to hit we won't hit everybody in the Bible. Not going to try to hit, but just want to bring about significant points, as we did today with Miriam. The point of what, again, she did not hold fast to, coming up against the man of God and ultimately coming up against God. With Hannah, her prayer life, being tied into Elkanah, her husband, making a vow. How many, you asked the question, Ross, how many of us make a vow and keep that vow? She's been wanting a child, and then once you have a child, something that you've been waiting for, for so long, now that you have that child, are you really going to give that child up? Do you really believe God that much? You believe God for the child. Now that you have the child, have your belief in God now decreased? That God can't do more? Or is that one just enough that you can give it back and now be elated in that God showed that he could open you up and use you? Or now do you just continuously hold on to what he gave you? See, it gives us some more significant points to look at in our belief with God. If you could believe God for the thing, in this case with Hannah, with a child, not just a child, a man child, she was specific. And God honored her vow, gave her the child, and now the test is on. Are you going to go through with what you said? Are you believing God for another child, or are you content with the fact that he even gave you a child? How's your relationship with your husband now that the child he gave you, you are willing to give away? So it can open up such a discussion, where we're just highlighting, the very thing that we see right there. But y'all, there's so many other things that have to go on in that family dynamic, that her walk with God. The things that now has she come up with some more things she wants from God that we know of not. Can you want more from God, as he's shown he can give you this? But again, what is now your relationship with God? Because if you ain't giving back that one child, if you ain't gonna give that 10%, and I don't mean to go financial on this, but if you ain't gonna get that 10%, why am I gonna bless you with more? I can't trust you with the 10. Why am I gonna bless you with more? Now you can walk in it. I made this other promise. If God give me $1 million, well, he honored, the 1,000 and you didn't honor the 100. Why he gonna give you 1,000,000? Like all of a sudden you're gonna become so holy and so religious or some supportive? No. Now you got to now show, and now you probably got to come with more than with the 10. Now you got to show that you really believe him and give more, because you didn't even honor him with the 10. But that's a whole nother area to go into, But y'all, it all ties in. I don't care how you slice it. Sometimes we just want to look at the surface of things, but it shows a whole lot of what God, I said, those intricate things. God is looking at a whole lot. You want me to bless you with all of this, and you show me with just what I've already given you, you're not going to do the right thing. Cain and Abel. I mean, y'all, it's all through the Bible. We don't like looking at it like that. But here on Disciples Talk. So any closing comments or thoughts before we get out of here this morning?
No, I would just like to say, like, just going back to Hannah, you don't have to be the loudest one in the room for God to use you. You don't have to be in control for God to use you. You don't have to be all out in public for God to use you. It's just that relationship. That's just the word of the day for me, is that relationship that you have with God, and he will use you in the way that he sees fit.
And he can elevate you based on that little faithfulness. Because again, all of us are ministers, even though we may not be called to the pulpit. He desires to use us all. That's why with this, discussing the word, this Disciples Talk, trying to reach everybody to understand that all of us are significant in the plan of God. And when all God's people, not just my people, the ones I like, when all God's people come to that understanding, that's when it's going to be what a time it shall be. Here, even in the earth, but more so in the heavenly. But we got to start here. And if we ain't going to do right with just this little bit we have here, how can we persuade God that we're going to do so much up there? Who's at the gate? Checking people in. Not the swordsman, chopping off heads, because we're coming up there, with our disbelief, our unbelief. No. So we have to understand what we do down here. And if we ain't giving that percentage, if we ain't giving that faithfulness, if we ain't walking in, what he desires us to, again, those of us that are called, if we're not doing it here in the earth, what makes us think we're going to heaven? Or even do it in heaven? But there's going to become another test to just see what side we're really on. So God has things lined up. If we don't know where we are today, there's going to come a day. So while I have what I have, my desire is to show God whose I am. I hope that's the same for us all. Any other closing thoughts, comments?
To piggyback on Roswell with Hannah, the Bible said the effective fervent prayers of a righteous availeth much. How she was praying, they thought she was drunk because she was so intense with her prayer. I believe sometimes God, when we ask God for stuff, do we really want it?
Mm.
How bad do we want it? Or we can keep asking it. I like it until like my grandkids, when they were smaller, they would ask me for stuff like to buy them a burger. And they all day long, Papa, the burger. They get on my everlasting nerve about this daggone burger. Not saying God get aggravated with our requests, but he kept it on the forefront about this burger. And I believe sometimes, like God said, the effective fervent prayer, do you really want what you're asking for? And do you believe that I can get it to you and give it to you? And that's why I look at Hannah. She was consistent with it.
Mm-hmm.
She had established that until I won't let go till he blessed me.
All right.
that type of prayer. And so God heard her the first time.
Yeah.
But sometimes, do you really, really want what you're asking for? And how bad do you want it?
Mm. Well, not only that, why do you want it? See,
Exactly.
God's also looking for that intent.
Exactly. Because
So
he ain't gonna really bless you nothing
mhm,
that's gonna take his place and take you from him.
that's right.
And a lot of times we ask for it anyway, and he'll give it to us just to show us.
Just to show us.
As you said, sir, bless me with the new job. I promise I pay my tithes. Bless me with the new car. I'll be in church every Sunday.
Not only that, I'm gonna take people to church. I'm gonna use it.
Hey, I'm just saying.
Yeah, we ain't the first to say it, nor shall we be the last.
Amen.
But hopefully, we can get everybody to the right place and the right mindset. Any other thoughts?
I just want to say that, it's important for us as believers to always see the good in people, because there is good in people. We may not see it initially, but somewhere deep down there is some good in all of us. And so again, that's the part that I think is the takeaway for me as far as Miriam is concerned. She may have had good intents, but at the end of the day, we just still have to be mindful of what we say about people.
Right.
Because again, there's still good in that person as well as bad in that person.
And that's a great point, Keisha. And I hate to add something else to it, but I need to. It's a great point. But our true walk is not to only see it. We just have to know there's some good in it. It's of God. We are of God. And we may never see the good side of anybody. Ooh, they always in jail. Ooh, they always doing bad. Oh, they always cutting up. Oh, they always doing wrong. But there's still some good there. And we may never see. We ain't got to get entangled with them. But again, in our walk, we always have to be mindful that there's still some God in them. And that's what we got to keep lifted up for them. It may not be our interaction with them, but it's our belief in God for them. That's always going to be a point. Keisha, that's a great point. That's an awesome point. Um, and I know sometimes in our limited walk with folks, we miss the bigger picture for them. But that's why we have to keep this word, in our mind that judge nothing before it's time. We're not the final say in anything. I probably, you know, counted out many a times. And not that I've arrived that where many may count now. I probably got more that account now, but not many. So we're not there yet. But that's what we owe. There's some good, even in the worst of us. And even in the best of us. There's still that thing we think we have, put under the blood. I've been delivered. Okay. It's still in there. Yeah, I'm watching that that wandering eye. So anyway, if there's nothing, it's 11:03, y'all. This has been good on this morning. I thank you all for what you brought forth, your comments, and as James said, and that mouth, women are going to show again. What we're going to identify is the significance of every woman, even though she didn't have a big title or what may have been considered a significant role. Man, in every significant event, there's a woman. And that's what we got to look at and understand. But again, y'all, it's 11:04. I thank you for being patient with us. This has been our Disciples Talk. Again, where we come together discussing the word. Saturday mornings, 10 a.m. If you have time available, please join us. Follow us. Send your comments. We thank you for your support. Again, we are all members of Jesus Peace Ministry. Saturday mornings, we come discussing the word. For a preach word, if you have a time available, catch our pastor, Apostle Dr. James W. McGrady Jr. Go to JesusPeaceMinistries.org. Get a preached word to deliver you, to encourage you, to enlighten you along this Christian journey. We love you. God bless you. We'll see you next week.